Okay, let me play with the formula y equals x squared a little bit more by changing one slight feature. Because we did a lot of focus on x squareds, but in the end we realized there could be numbers in front of the x squareds, and that caused a little bit of complication in our work. So what does that do for graphing? What if I put a number in front of the x squared? What does that do to my graph? For example, well, suppose I asked to graph y equals twice x squared. That is, what have I had before? I'll now double it. Oh, think about it. When I put in x equals 1, I got an output of 1 in the ordinary formula, but now I'll get double 1. 1 squared is 1, double it is 2. I now get a graph twice as high. When x was 2 before, I had a height of 4 in the ordinary graph, but now I'll get twice 2 squared, twice 4, 8, twice as high. When x was 0, I had a height of 0, and now I'll get twice 0, still 0. At negative 1, used to have a height of 1, but now I'll have a height of double 1, twice as high, twice as high, twice as high. Every output is twice as high, and that means it looks like I'm getting a graph that's something like a steeper version of y equals x squared. That's y equals 2x squared. Is a steeper version. If I want to make it even steeper still, I could do a bigger number. Instead of having everything be twice as high, now make every output 20 times as high. What used to be 1 high is now 20 high. What used to be 4 high is now 80 high. This is going to be a very steep version of y equals x squared. So this is, that was y equals 2x squared. This is y equals 20x squared. If I want to do a really crazy version, I could do y equals 1 million x squared. Now, it'll still go through 0 because 0 times, a million times 0 squared is still height 0, but everything else would be like really ridiculously high really quickly if I did a million x squared. Y equals 1 million x squared. A very steep U-shaped graph. Now, it'll still be symmetrical, it'll still be centered at the origin, but that'll be a very steep symmetrical U-shaped graph centered at the vertex, the origin. Actually, what if I didn't want a steep one? What if I wanted a shallow one? What can I do to get a graph that's sort of more like this, shallower than what I had before? Can you think of what I could do to get a graph like that? Well, yeah. What if I didn't just do height 1, I did say half the height. Instead of doing height 4, I did half the height. Instead of doing height 9 for x equals 3, I did half the height. I bet that's the graph of y equals 1/2 x squared. That would be like a shallow version of this U-shaped graph. I can make it even shallower still by doing an even smaller number. Like this one is y equals 0.01 x squared. See what's going on there? I'm going very fast, but I hope it's okay. What if I made this so small it actually became y equals 0x squared? Well, 0 times anything is 0, so the graph here would be so shallow this is actually just the flat horizontal line. Oh, which then makes me think, what if I went even lower than 0? What if I went to the negatives? Maybe I should start doing a different color because this is getting very messy. What if I did y equals negative x squared, negative 1 times x squared? What sort of graph would I have then? Well, this will take every output I had before and make it negative. So if this was 1 high, this would be negative 1 high, down that way. If this was 4 high before, this would be now negative 4 high, down that way. This was height 0, negative 0 is still 0. This was height 1, negative 1. This was height 4, negative 4. In fact, you can see it's just doing an upside down version. All the positive heights now become negative heights. I'm now going down to the negative direction. If I want to say a shallow negative graph, I guess I could just do a small negative coefficient, like something like y equals negative 1/33 x squared. If I wanted a really steep negative upside down U-shaped graph, I could do this like a really big negative number, like y equals negative 500 x squared. Beautiful, beautiful. So that means basically what I'm saying here is every graph of the form y equals some number in front of x squared is still going to be one of these symmetrical U-shaped graphs. It's still centered at the origin, because when x is 0, no matter what a is, y would be 0 as well. So it's still centered at the origin, but it's got some sort of steepness here. This number here tells me the steepness of the graph. If it's a big positive number, it's going to be a really steep graph hugging the x-axis. If it's a big negative number, it's going to be a very steep graph going in the negative direction, hugging the axis. If it's a very small number, like close to 0, then it's going to be a very shallow U-shaped graph. Beautiful, beautiful. So a quick question for you. Look at that messy board. Hopefully that makes some sense. It's extraordinarily messy, but hopefully you're following. But I'm going to erase it now because I want to ask you, could you write for me a formula of one of these U-shaped graphs sitting on my head. So let's draw me again. Here's me. What was that? It's 4 and 6. I would like a formula, any formula, of a graph that sits on my head like this. Can you write down 1? Can you write down 2? Can you write down 7 different formulas that would fit those parameters? And I bet the answer is yes. I'll give you a moment to think about it, because I'm about to give away an answer as well, just to check that we've got our thinking as aligned. So one moment, give it a try. Okay, so here's one possible answer. I want an upside down version of this symmetrical U-shaped graph with 4 behaving like 0 and everything 6 high. That is, I want a graph with 4 behaving like 0, I want everything to be 6 high, and I want it to be downward, going to the negatives, so I'll choose, I don't know, a steepness of say -2, or -5, or -99. Anything you like, y equals that. There is a formula for an upside down symmetrical U-shaped graph sitting on my head. And you can do any number you like here as long as it's a negative number, and you'll be correct as well. Great.